Hey there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network, and I want to talk about this game. It's The Others, and what this is almost a commentary response, I suppose, to actually a surprisingly large number of reviews that I have seen out there. I've been a little bit gobsmacked, I have to say, at some of the reaction to this game, and a lot of the big objections that I'm hearing. I wanted to kind of give a bit of comeback on for you guys, because I know what it's like when you're looking at a game like this that potentially might have drawn you in and got you really quite excited about it. And you know, it represents a fairly significant investment. The base game itself is, well, it's RRP 90 quid, maybe it's $90 as well, it's probably the same, but you can get it for cheaper if you shop around. So understandably, you want to know, if you're reading these reviews or hearing these, watching these videos, and people are saying well, some really quite negative things about the game, I felt like I wanted to just come back at that. We have played it 3 times now. I bought this a few weeks ago, and the 3 different times, just a bit of background before I go through the exact objections that I'm going to address here. The 3 different games that we played have been all really quite different. Now, the first game that I played of this, where I played with a group of real power gamers, so guys who really look at the mechanics of a game and play very tactically. They're very war gamer minded, and they'll approach a game in that sort of fashion. In that first game, they absolutely trounced me as the Sins player. They took me apart, and they'd completed their mission by the end of the second round. Now, the second game, I resolved, a bit shocked at that experience, I resolved to think, right, well, perhaps this is a game where I can't just do my normal, I'm going to DM an RPG style session and make sure everyone has fun. And I had to really go at it, and I did. And I played with a different group of players, maybe not quite so power gamey group, but still people who knew what they were doing. And it was much more in my favour. It wasn't a complete trouncing like it'd been the other way, but it was a convincing win for me as a Sins player. Now, in the third game, I played against a similar group, but a little more experienced, a little more grokking of game mechanics, and it was a brilliant, tense, taut affair that came right down to pretty much a final dice roll, which was very exciting. So, so after those 3 games, I wanted to talk through the objections that I've heard in these other videos, other video reviews, and then my take on them. And the first big objection that I've heard people say about this is they've essentially said it's kind of just a dice rolling game. It really just all comes down to just rolling dice, you're rolling dice and you're rolling dice. Now, I think that if you are seeing it as that, you've probably missed out on how the game is set up. Because the game is set up, of course, with these missions. These are a very clever thing, I think, that the designer has done here, and I think that what we find is that how they've organised these missions and how you go through a mission helps to keep you with this very strategic goal in mind. And then all the time, of course, you're trying to work out your individual tactics, you know, action by action, turn by turn, to see that strategy realised. It's a very nicely organised setup. And I think the problem is that if you just start getting drawn into, oh, I've got to kill that character, I've got to kill that character, I'm going to kill that character, then you do just start thinking about rolling dice. And what you start doing is forgetting about this. And this has to be the overarching thing that controls everything. And I think what you'll then start doing is you'll start organising your turns and working together in a very different fashion. So, for instance, the first one here, on this one is gear up, equip a number of equipment cards. So straight away, a team that's got anything about them is going to be going, right, well, there's all the locations we can go to pick up things. How do we get there? What do we need to clear along the way? It's not just killing monsters. I also need to make sure I clear out fire. We need to send the fixers. There's different classes in the game. We need to send the fixers forward, but we've got to protect them. We can't just send them out because they're not normally very good at combat. So we've got to have the shooters available to cover them. We've got to have the bruisers ready to run in and try and take on some of those monsters if they do get engaged, and so on and so forth. And actually, it's this flow that's created with the missions that I think always keeps this bigger picture of what's going on in the game in mind, rather than being, oh, it's another set of roles, oh, it's another set of roles, almost with no context. Because that is absolutely not how it's felt in any of the games that I've played. Largely because all the players that I played with, and obviously as the Sins player I'm reminding them as well, is it's all about this. It's all about working around this and trying to make sure that that happens. Now a big problem that other people have sort of aimed at the game is that there doesn't seem to be a strong story. Like, there's no story. In fact, I heard one reviewer saying, I'm doing all this stuff and I'm moving around the board and I've got all these characters and everything looks cool and there's dice and battles and upgrades, but I don't care. He said, like, I don't care about these characters. I don't know really anything about them. I don't know where they're from. I don't know what they're doing, where they're going. I just don't really care about it. Now, I think that there's two things closely linked here, and that's a sort of a story and the theme aspect. And I'm going to focus on the story, that there doesn't seem to be a story. A lot of people have said, why has this not got a campaign? This absolutely should have a campaign. And I think that if you are asking for a campaign for a game like this, well, specifically the others, then you've probably not understood what the theme of the game is. The whole idea is that the story actually is the big narrative that's being played out, of which when you're doing one mission, you're doing a tiny little bit of it. The characters are not the central part of this story, the hero players that you're playing, because it isn't really a story. It's about doing a mission, because the overarching story is that the Hell Club have brought about the apocalypse in the city of Haven, and all of these heroes are just doomed characters doing their very best to sell their lives very expensively in pursuit of the mission. It's all about the mission. And so the idea of having a campaign for this, when you're putting together this sort of Hellboy team, it doesn't really fit, because the whole idea is that these characters are meant to be expendable. It's a dark, post-apocalyptic, gritty sort of setting where I guess you could sort of say that idea of, life is cheap, even of these, powerful heroes. And what they're doing is they're in this very doomed apocalyptic situation where they're not going to see their lives carry on and grow and get more powerful and so on. It's a glorious difference. I love it. It's a very different change in the theme and the feel of the whole game and the whole idea behind it. One of the other things that I think is really important about this understanding of there's no campaign because of that is that every game feels like a very tight, contained experience. And this probably is also linked to the fact that it's missions, and that the missions don't overall link together. There's a sort of you could play through them all, and then there's one big final one where the Hell Club all turn up, and it is a sort of a crescendo sort of finale. But it isn't a typical sense of campaign of it linked and each game is adjusted because of what happened in the previous one, or you're getting upgrades. And again, these characters are dying off. Like, they're dying. They're not meant to be around and growing and changing as the game goes on, or as you do more missions. Another thing that I really loved about the theme is the theme of this. It's dark, but it's kind of as much as you want to take it. You can really go with it. As the Sins player, I was really laying it on thick with. I like DMing and doing RPGs and things like that anyway. But I was really quite laying it on thick. Whispering and things like that. Just come on, the temptation of taking this power and becoming more corrupt, and you can really get into the flow of the fun of the setting. And in fact, the Sin cards are a brilliant aid to that as well. Look, you could play this game and not really go into that. You could just go, right, I'm playing this card because an abomination got destroyed, current hero takes 2 corruption. And you can play it very mechanically like that. And that's fine, and a lot of groups will want to do it that way. However, I'm quite happy to play it with a lot of theme. They've got names. This one's called Slouching Towards Bethlehem. And I would come up with some little quick bit of theme and fluff as to why a current hero takes 2 corruption. What was also brilliant actually about this particular card, the Slouching Towards Bethlehem, is that one of the players in our group said, hang on a second, isn't that from a poem? I think it is. He went on Google, checked, it was a Yeats poem. And in the middle of our game, he read this stanza of poetry that had Slouching Towards Bethlehem in it. And it was brilliant. I mean, in terms of setting and theme, and it really brought it to life. I like to have, you know, creepy background music playing and things like that when you're playing a horror adventure game. Why not? It was brilliant. Fantastic. Now, at the same time, this isn't a game that's your classic a merry trash, well, we'll just la-di-da our way through it and, you know, just guns blazing and just living the, you know, almost like the game Firefly, where you just do what you like through it, really. No, this game is, you need to play tightly. You need to play very tactically to really get the best experience out of it. Because if the one side is playing tactically and really going for the win, and the other side isn't, I mean, you will absolutely thrash that other side that isn't. And I think this is where some people have levelled the claim that this game isn't balanced, that it's imbalanced. The very definition of balance is that both sides have to be trying and playing really hard and playing really well. My experience is that when both sides are doing that and working really hard and keeping the missions in mind all the time, actually it's created our tensest and closest and funnest game. Well, actually, not just of this, I mean, tensest, funnest, closest game that I've played in a long time, in that third game that we played. A further note on that theme, almost a reference that I wanted to say, and I don't think spoil too much, but this sort of sense of doomed characters, this has got like a Rogue One feel to it. And if you're trying to play the game wanting to keep your character alive and becoming attached to it and so on, and that's not really the idea of this. You're trying to sell your hero's life as expensive as you can. You know, you take wounds sometimes because you know you can get more damage, or you can kill an important monster, or you can get to a certain region and clear, or whatever it is you need to do. Now, a final thing that I'm going to talk about that a lot of people that I've seen have had an issue with is this reaction system. And this is the idea that there isn't really an overlord phase as such in this game. The Sins player has reaction tokens, and as things are happening on the board, as players' turns take place, the Sins player can react to it. Now, the objection is that people are saying, oh, it breaks up the flow and things never really keep going. You don't get one action into the next and into the next, into the next. You're always having to constantly, as heroes, like readjust because the Sins player just did something, and so on and so forth. This, for us, has been one of the brilliant things about this game, hardly a drawback. And the reason is that with these kind of games, you can get into that sort of flow where it feels like the Overlord player is just trying to make it a good game for the heroes. That's not how this game is meant to be, remember. We talked about that. And actually, what created this brilliant tension that we had in this game was this reactionary type system from the Sins player, because every time it came to the end of a character's turn, a hero's turn, which is when the Sins player would take their reaction token, you know, all the players would sort of be like, are you going to take an action? And you could see that they were like, oh no, what's he going to do to us? Brilliant. It created this amazing tension in our gaming group. And you know, and there'd be literally an audible sigh of relief as they're like, oh, phew, he's got nothing to play. Brilliant. Okay, right, on to the next one. And then, you know, a groan of, oh no, he's going to take an action. Oh, what's he going to do? He could move that way. You know, the engagement of everybody was brilliant. And of course, as the Sins player, you're constantly looking and seeing what's happening and then trying to think, is now my time to strike? Is now when I'm going to do something? And these cards, the Sin cards, they're played at different times. So there might be, you know, after a certain unit is destroyed, or at the start of the first hero's turn, or at the start of a fight. So you're always engaged, even though you might not be actually doing anything. You're always engaged. because you're always looking out for when your trigger can go, and you can jump in and go, I'm going to do this to you, and then the players go, oh no, he's going to cause us issues, and it created a marvellous tension within our gaming group that meant everyone was completely engaged the whole time. They were sort of like thinking, I don't want to discuss anything, until he said, right, you're not doing anything, are you? No. Right, he's not doing something. Right, now we can plan and work out what we're doing. Great fun. And then, as the Sins player, I was thoroughly enjoying listening to him going, okay, I was thinking of doing that. Well, that means I could do that. And you're constantly turning things over in your mind as the heroes are doing the same and trying to work out what they're doing. So, you can tell I really enjoyed this game, and our gaming group really did. And after that third game, because the first game, of course, was such a blowout, and the second game was a bit closer, but it was still quite skewed. And the third game, where both groups of people really went for it, and it resulted in this amazing experience, I went out and bought some new stuff, okay? Which is why we've got other things here. We've got, we bought some new Sins, we bought some new hero characters. We've got loads more heroes to play with, and actually, in the 3 games, we've actually only played the one mission. We've only played Haven's Last Stand, which is the first one. And there are 2 other types of missions, and I think there's another 6 missions there. And of course, they've all got different board layouts. And with these new expansions, you get new boards and new layouts. The replayability of this game is off the scale. There are so many things that you can change up for every single game, and I think that's one of the really strong things about it. And this brings me around to the final point that I want to end with, really. The replayability of this game is, I think, one of the most exciting aspects about it. And I think why that happens is because the type of game this is. This isn't a story, narratively driven type game. There is a big background story going on, but your individual mission feels more like, and I've got to be careful how I put this, because this could be a thing that puts you off, but actually for me it's a huge plus point, and it has been for our gaming group, is that it feels a little bit like a computer game mission. Now what I mean by that is, if you've ever played those kind of games where everything is really finely balanced, you have to play really well to outwit the computer or outwit someone else who's controlling something else, and and it's a very balanced setup. And it feels like every mission that you do, and these are frequently 90-minute missions. I don't think 2 hours would be a long mission for this game. So you could realistically get through 2 setups in an evening, 2 games in an evening. And it feels a bit like, if you've ever been into like collectible card games, and I think the reason those are very popular is you can play a game out in 20 minutes, half an hour, and you can kind of play, go, set up, see how it works, do your strategies work, do your tactics work. Oh, if I just made a couple of changes to my play, this would have resulted in a different result. Okay, let's go again, let's go again, let's go again. Keep testing, tweaking, changing. Let's do it this way, let's do it that way. Maybe I can overcome it if I did this differently, and so on. And I get that feeling with the others. There are so many bits to the game that are changeable. The mission that you're taking on, the board that you play on, the different Sin that you play with, the myriad options for what your hero team is, the acolytes that you go with on the board, and so on and so forth. All of these things, if you change up just one thing of it, creates a different feeling experience. It will create a different challenge, if you like, on both sides. And this is where I really feel it comes into its own as this very tense, tight, tactical game that you play against each other. In fact, one reviewer said it's less like a sort of an RPG and it's more like chess. Like, in no ways let that put you off, because it clearly isn't chess. But there is this real sense of, this is what my character can do, or this is what my Sin is able to do. This is the mission. Right, let's play right into that, keeping both things in mind and really challenging each other to try and overcome whatever it is that the mission is, or or the particular group of team, the particular team that the heroes have put together as the Sins player. You got to work out, how am I going to get around this issue? They are going to carve like butter through that lot, so I need to think about doing this and doing that and making other challenges for, and so on. So it's a great game, guys. I really have thoroughly enjoyed it, and so many of these objections that I've seen people raise to it, they just haven't been my experience. I genuinely feel like if people had just got their head around actually what type of game this is, they probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. And I think it's almost a sort of a managing expectations, which is what I wanted to help you with. When you're trying to make that decision as to whether you invest in a game like this, I think you need to know what kind of game you're getting yourself into. And I think some of these reviews haven't really done it quite justice. They've set it up as something different to what it actually is, or perhaps even the reviewer in their own mind has gone into it expecting it to be something different to what it actually is. And of course that will massively colour your experience then of the game and how it plays out. So hopefully that was helpful. I'd love to have comments, stick comments in the channel below. If there's anything you think I missed out, if there's something you really strongly disagree with, go for it. I'd love to have the discussion over it, because this to me has been one of the finds of the last 12 months of gaming. And I and a whole bunch of others of us in my gaming group are really excited to see more of the others hit the table. Anyway, until next time, keep enjoying your board gaming.